Hello dear friends of the gallery. Today I would like to guide you around the exhibition Scheinriese, in English Mock Giant, which features new works by the Swiss artist Nic Hess. Hess, who was born in 1968 in Zurich, where he lives again after years in Los Angeles and Guadalajara, is showing his 7th solo exhibition with us. You might ask yourself why I am mentioning this rudimentary information when it's clearly visible in what you see to my left in the light box. This is actually an artwork from 2007 referencing the artist's CV. Whether the information given is true or not remains unclear. In any case, it is a quotation of the basic information that galleries and art dealers typically put down in the CV that is laid out for our visitors. And in this sense, the lightbox serves rather as a reference to the system of our art scene than mere information. The bonds between Nic Hess and his home country are, regardless of the fact that he traveled the world a lot in his younger years, intense. In quite a few works of this exhibition, we experience these references to Switzerland or Swiss phenomena. This, for instance, applies to the collage Swiss tourism. Here, he created a composition dominated by organic, colorful forms that were carved out of passepartout cardboard, as well as illustrations of classic Swiss tourist sports like skiing and ice skating. Hess took these illustrations from advertisements, brochures and leaflets that intend to promote Switzerland as a tourist hotspot. The composition itself has three-dimensional elements, created through the cutouts as well as a dynamic quality through the taped lines. The work, titled Berge im Kopf, which translates to mountains in the head, directly refers to what people like to do in Switzerland. We see a giant wandering around, carrying what might be a big backpack, as well as a hiking stick. The figure is composed or, again, formed with passepartout cardboard. In his head we see, as if the brain was open for a kind of introspection, mountains, the beautifully lit Matterhorn, and, again, a wanderer who is enjoying the beautiful, breathtaking landscape. The two collages, Adieu CS and Adieu and Farewell CS, refer in an ironic but also melancholic way to the former, highly important private bank Credit Suisse, which was sold to the UBS Bank in spring 2023. The reference is not only created through the titles, but also by the colors as well as by the sail and the boat, which sails away from the coast. The logo of the former bank consisted of one of the blue shades Hess used, as well as of sails. This way of remembering the bank and the downsides and pitfalls of the banking business, which is part of the elements that define Switzerland's identity, is somewhat critical, and it shows Nic Hess' interest in issues that touch our societies and politics. That is, beyond the references to Switzerland, the second aspect that defines his oeuvre. I will talk about that more soon. Before I do so, I would like to mention a third aspect important to Hess' work: the repeated references to art history. We see that, for instance, in the two Credit Suisse collages, because they obviously remind us of Caspar David Friedrich's depiction of the sea and the ship, as well as of Lionel Feininger's seascapes. We see references to art history also in other works of our show. For instance, in a sculpture called Inuit Steinbock, in English Inuit Ibex. It is a somewhat, although not very obvious, representation of an ibex. The day-glow colors and the fact that the work is just a simple assemblage of logs refer to the very well-known Swiss artist Ugo Rondinone and his stone sculptures, totems for which he simply placed boulders colored in day-glow colors, one upon the other. In addition to that, the fact that the figure is created with elements that have nothing to do with the final impersonated image can be related to strategies Pablo Picasso was using. So in this work, we have both the relation to Switzerland and the relation to art history. Another collage of our exhibition, Half Klimt, Half Wesley, is appropriating a painting of a nude woman for which John Wesley had already been appropriating a drawing by Gustav Klimt. And now this is interesting. For Klimt, and in Klimt's times, it was perfectly possible to make a drawing of a female nude, to display her nudity and, if it was seen as such, her attractiveness. It was also still possible to do so for John Wesley. Nowadays, either work would be more or less impossible. A painting like this, done in the present day, might well be regarded as vulgar and provocative. Thus, the yellow grid placed over the woman's vagina reflects our current ideas about what can and cannot be shown. There are 3 more works, besides the 2 Credit Suisse collages, that particularly show Nic Hess' interest in political and societal issues. One is titled Unfriendly Fight. We see 2 persons in fighting positions. One is stomping on the other, who is already on the ground, seemingly bleeding from his arm. The dominant figure carries the head of a blue elephant, and we also see 1 large orange eye and a wide sausage-like mouth. Once we remember that the blue elephant is one of the symbols of the US-American Republican Party, the unfriendly fighter turns into a representation of the current US-American president, with his orange skin color and his, from time to time, big grin. In Oriental Storm, we see a very agitated, seemingly turbulent composition hovering over a cityscape with towers and a cupola and a very moved sea. The landscape could very well be a reference to the current situation in the Middle East. One final work that I would like to mention in the context of politics is the installation bearing the title 500 Milliarden Ei, which translates to 500 billion egg. For this piece, Hess put thin tape on an ostrich egg and the number 5 plus 8 zeros. This reference points to the 500 billion fund that the new German government is creating to pay for all the infrastructure necessities in Germany. 500 billion is an amount that is barely graspable. Few people only are able to thoroughly understand this quantity. Consequently, it seems, Hess made a mistake, if you will, with the number he has glued to the egg. It is only 5 billion. 3 zeros are missing. Would you have noticed? The Scheinriese, that gives our show its title, appears as a character in the novel Jim Button and Luke the Engine Driver by the German author Michael Ende. The figure, a mock giant, appears gigantic when seen from afar and shrinks the closer one gets. This character can be understood as a metaphor for big, successful people. We can think of politicians, people from the show business, and so forth. From a distance, they appear impressive, powerful, and unapproachable. But as soon as you get closer to them, this impression is often lost. They appear more human, sometimes even ridiculous or disappointing. This realization can be both sympathetic and revealing. This brings me to another aspect of Hess' work that I had already mentioned: irony. Some of our collages display plain irony, like Das Bild hängt schief, the picture hangs crooked. In the collective consciousness of Germans of a certain age, the baby boomers, this title evokes the deep-rooted memory of a short film by the comedian Loriot. A traveling salesman visits a possible client, is asked to wait for her in the living room, tries to adjust a picture that is crooked, and, throughout the film, ends up destroying the entire furnishing in his attempt to correct the resulting mistake he keeps making while trying to fix his last one. Hess adds to this crooked picture a beautiful 3-dimensional sunset. More irony and elements which have been done with a twinkle in the eye can be seen in details of the large-scale tape installations that are to be experienced in each of our rooms. There is a diver that is about to be swallowed by one half of a whale. There is a frog patiently waiting for the fly to come into his vicinity. There is a skier racing down a slope, or an elderly person resting in his armchair. The taped large-scale installations are what made Hess known, not only in his home country. His installations were on display in international places like the Hammer Museum in Los Angeles, or the Haus der Kunst in Munich, or the Mercedes Museum in Stuttgart, to name just a few. So it was natural for him to tape around the group of 12 small collages that bear the main title, The Rembrandts. We see, or shouldn't we better say experience, a dynamic group of arcs that seem to frame the collages. On the front wall of the room, a putto plays with shoelaces of a boot that continue to form the arches that structure the room across all 4 walls and even the ceiling. For the collages, Hess uses reproductions of Rembrandt portraits from a monographic volume. He layers up to 5 consecutive pages from the book and cuts out different areas of the portraits on the individual pages. This method reminds me of the famous surrealist game Cadavre Exquis, Exquisite Cadaver. For these games, André Breton had defined the following rules: fold a page several times, define categories in words or drawn images, and let each member of a group fill in one word or element. The outcome is a non-controlled sentence or image. It is not nonsense, but rather a new sense that depends on the loss of the one fully defining author. Same with Nic Hess, the Rembrandts. The outcome of his experiment was not fully clear for him. He took the outcome as it appeared. With this digital tour of our exhibition, we hope to have given a good impression for those who were not able to see it. If you want, you can download a digital dossier on our webpage or send us an email to ask for a copy of the exhibition catalogue. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.